2003, peak early 2000s. Paris Hilton is famous for being famous. The Simple Life is on TV. Flip phones are cool. And everyone, and I mean everyone, is wearing the same hat. A trucker hat, mesh back, foam front. And those two words in that specific script, Von Dutch. Paris Hilton wore one. Ashton Kutcher wore one. Britney, Justin, Christina, Bianca, everyone. If you weren't wearing Von Dutch, you weren't cool. People waited months for these hats. Paid $40, $60, sometimes $80 for a trucker hat. The kind mechanics and farmers got free from feed stores. By 2004, Von Dutch was doing over $33 million in sales. The brand was everywhere. Hats, jeans, jackets, accessories. You couldn't escape it. But here's what nobody told you while you were dropping $80 on that hat. The brand was built on lies. The name was stolen from a dead man. And the people running it, some of them had actual criminal connections. The real Von Dutch, Kenneth Howard, was a legendary custom car artist who died broke in 1992. He hated commercialism. He hated corporations. He rejected money his entire life. And the brand that used his name, it represented everything he despised. The people who created the brand weren't family, weren't friends. They were opportunists who saw a name nobody had trademarked and decided to steal it. His daughters were pushed aside, exploited, given scraps while the brand made millions. The financing was questionable. The business practices were shady. The whole thing was essentially a con. This is the story of how a counterculture icon's legacy was stolen, bastardized, and turned into the tackiest symbol of 2002's excess. And it starts with a man who just wanted to paint cars and be left alone. Southern California, 1,950 seconds. The birth of custom culture. Hot rods, custom motorcycles, an entire counterculture built around cars and art. And at the center of it was Kenneth Howard, born in 1929. Everyone called him Von Dutch. The man was a genius. Specifically, he was a pinstriper. You know those thin, flowing decorative lines on custom cars and motorcycles? Von Dutch basically invented that modern style. His technique was so precise, so fluid that other artists couldn't replicate it. They tried. They failed. His lines were unmistakable. He painted on everything: cars, bikes, helmets, leather jackets. His signature style, those flying eyeball designs, the precise pinstripes, the iconic lettering. But Von Dutch wasn't just an artist. He was a character, a true counterculture figure. Brilliant, troubled, alcoholic, paranoid, absolutely authentic. He lived in poverty by choice. Could have been rich. His work was that good. People wanted to pay him, but he refused jobs if he didn't like the person. Didn't matter how much they offered. He hated commercialism, hated corporations, hated selling out. The whole concept of branding and marketing, he despised it. He worked on what he wanted, when he wanted, for who he wanted. Money wasn't the point. The art was the point. Stories from the custom culture community: Von Dutch would do elaborate work for free if he respected you, would refuse $10,000 jobs if he thought you were a poser. He was difficult, unpredictable, sometimes mean. Not a saint by any means, but his integrity was absolute. He never compromised, never sold his name, never licensed his designs. By the 1980s and 92nd, the custom culture scene had changed. Von Dutch was still around, still working, but the mainstream had moved on. He was a legend in custom car circles. But outside that world, most people had no idea who he was. September 1992. Kenneth Howard Von Dutch died. Liver failure. He was 63. No fanfare. Small funeral. The people who knew him, who respected the real him, came to pay respects. He died broke. No savings. No property. No business empire. What he left behind: his art, his influence on custom culture, his legend among people who cared about authenticity. And his daughters, Lorna and Tori Howard, left with memories of a complicated father, some pieces of his art, and absolutely no financial inheritance. And here's the critical detail: Kenneth Howard never trademarked Von Dutch, never copyrighted his designs properly, never thought he needed to. Why would he? He wasn't building a brand. He was just an artist doing his thing. So he died. And for a few years, he was just a legend in niche circles. His name meant something to custom car people. To everyone else, nobody. 1996, 4 years after Von Dutch's death. That's when they came. The vultures, the opportunists, the people who saw a name that wasn't protected and a style that could be commercialized. And they were about to do something Von Dutch would have absolutely hated. 1996, enter Michael Castle and Robert Vaughn, two guys from the fashion industry. They weren't from the custom culture world. They weren't Von Dutch's friends. They weren't even fans, really. They were businessmen who'd done their research. And they discovered something interesting. The name Von Dutch wasn't trademarked. His designs weren't properly copyrighted. It was all just sitting there, unprotected, and they saw opportunity. The 90s fashion scene was shifting. Streetwear was becoming huge. Counterculture aesthetics were being commodified. Vintage Americana was trendy. Von Dutch's style, the pinstripes, the flying eyeball, that Americana hot rod aesthetic, it was perfect. So they hatched a plan, create a Von Dutch brand, use his name, use his designs, make it cool, make it expensive. Sell it to people who had no idea who he actually was. But there was one problem. Von Dutch had daughters. And technically, they had some claim to their father's legacy. So Castle and Vaughn approached them. The pitch was smooth. We want to honor your father's legacy. Keep his name alive. Share his art with the world. And you'll get royalties. You'll benefit financially from his name. The daughters considered it. They weren't rich. Their father left them nothing material. And these businessmen were promising to preserve his legacy and pay them. 1997, they signed the contract. What the daughters didn't fully understand, the contract was heavily weighted in Castle and Von E's favor. The licensing agreement gave the daughters a small percentage. The rest, to the people who were using their father's name. They essentially signed away control of their father E's name and art for a fraction of what it would become worth. 1999, the Von Dutch brand officially launched. The products, trucker hats, t-shirts, jeans, all with Von Dutch's name, his flying eyeball logo, his pinstripe aesthetic, the marketing, all about authenticity, real custom culture, American original, everything Kenneth Howard had stood against, mass production, corporate branding, selling a lifestyle, commercializing counterculture. But that was the vision. Take the cool parts of custom culture, the aesthetic, the attitude, the Americana, strip away all the actual values, and sell it to people who thought they were buying authenticity. Early sales were okay, not spectacular. The brand existed, but it wasn't huge yet. For a couple years, Von Dutch was just another small fashion brand trying to make it in a crowded market. Then, in 2001, everything changed. Enter Tony Sorensen, a French businessman connected to the Paris fashion and nightlife scene. Money to invest. Big ambitions. He bought a majority stake in Von Dutch. And he had plans, big plans. Who Tony Sorensen really was, his background, his connections, his financing. We'll get into that because it's where things get really questionable. But first, what about the daughters? Lorna and Tori. They were pushed further to the margins. As the brand changed hands, their influence became essentially zero. Their royalty percentage remained tiny even as the brand started making real money. And their father's art, the actual designs he created, was being reproduced, modified, mass-produced. The flying eyeball on cheap t-shirts made in factories overseas. His pinstripe style copied onto products he never touched. His name on items he never would have approved. The daughters watched their father's legacy get turned into something completely opposite of who he was. And they got checks. Small checks. Nowhere near proportional to the revenue being generated from their father's name. But Tony Sorensen had a plan to take Von Dutch from small brand to global phenomenon. And he brought in the perfect person to execute it, Christian Audigier. Audigier came on as designer and creative director. But his real skill? Marketing, hype, creating artificial demand. Together, Sorensen and Audigier crafted the strategy that would make Von Dutch explode: celebrity gifting, strategic placement, creating the illusion of organic celebrity adoption. They sent free Von Dutch products to every celebrity they could find. Paris Hilton, Ashton Kutcher, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Bianca. And it worked. Celebrities started wearing the stuff. Paparazzi photographed them. Tabloids published the photos. More celebrities saw other celebrities wearing it and wanted in. The snowball effect. By 2003, Von Dutch was everywhere. The trucker hat became the status symbol. Everyone wanted one, and the brand made them wait for it. Limited supply, waiting lists, creating artificial scarcity to drive demand. A $5 trucker hat selling for $40, $60, $80. People paid it happily. 2003 to 2004, Von Dutch generated over $33 million in sales. Some estimates go higher. It was the hottest brand in fashion. Cultural phenomenon. Everyone knew the name. Kenneth Howard, the real Von Dutch, who rejected commercialism his entire life, who died broke by choice, who hated corporations. His name was now on overpriced, mass-produced trash worn by the exact kind of people he would have despised. But behind the glamour and the celebrity photos and the revenue numbers, there were questions about the money, about the management, about who Tony Sorensen really was and where his financing came from. And some of those answers, they involve actual criminal connections. Let's talk about Tony Sorensen, the man who turned Von Dutch into a phenomenon. Born in Denmark, operated primarily in France and later the US. He was connected to the Paris fashion and nightlife scene. The kind of guy who knew everyone, could get celebrities to parties, could make connections between brands and famous people. But his business history? Controversial. Multiple ventures that ended in disputes, allegations, legal issues. Business partners claiming they'd been screwed over. Investors questioning where money went. The pattern repeated across different ventures. But here is the bigger question. Where did Sorensen get the money to buy Von Dutch and then expand it so aggressively? 2001. Buys majority stake 2002. Massive expansion, celebrity gifting campaign 2003, international expansion, multiple stores 2004, peak revenue. This kind of expansion costs millions. Store leases, inventory, marketing, celebrity gifting, staff. But the financing sources? Never fully transparent. Investors whose identities weren't always public. Money flowing through multiple entities. There were allegations never proven in court, but reported by people in the industry of connections to questionable money sources. The European nightlife and fashion world where Sorensen operated had a reputation, where legitimate business and less legitimate money often mixed. Cash-heavy businesses like nightclubs and fashion retail, they've historically been attractive for money laundering. To be clear, Tony Sorensen was never criminally convicted of anything related to Von Dutch. These are industry allegations, patterns, questions never fully answered. But the questions remain, and people who worked with him tell stories. Former Von Dutch employees describe chaos, unpaid vendors, bills going months without payment, money mismanagement, questionable business practices. Then there's Christian Audigier, the marketing genius behind Von Dutch's explosion. Unlike Sorensen, Audigier had a legitimate fashion background. He'd worked with major brands. He understood the industry. At Von Dutch, he was officially the designer and creative director. But his real value was marketing and celebrity connections. The celebrity gifting strategy? That was largely Audigier's genius. He didn't just send random stuff to random celebrities. It was calculated. Paris Hilton because she was everywhere in tabloids. Ashton Kutcher because he was dating Demi Moore and was cool with young people. Britney because teens idolized her. One celebrity wore it, others saw, wanted to be part of the trend. Cascade effect. But this wasn't organic. This wasn't celebrities genuinely loving the brand. This was manufactured hype. Free products worth thousands. Sometimes actual payments for wearing specific items to specific events. Strategic placement that looked accidental. The whole brand was built on authenticity, honoring a real artist, real custom culture. But the marketing was completely fake, manufactured, bought and paid for. And while the brand was generating $33 million plus in revenue, there were complaints about unpaid suppliers. Small businesses that manufactured products not getting paid on time, or not getting paid full amounts, or getting stiffed entirely. Legal disputes started emerging. Trademark fights, ownership battles, royalty disputes. The daughters Lorna and Tori tried to fight back legally. They'd signed the original contract but realized they'd been exploited. They were getting maybe 1- to royalties while the brand made tens of millions. The math didn't work, but legal battles are expensive, and they were fighting people with much deeper pockets. Then there was the counterfeiting. Fake Von Dutch everywhere. Which is ironic, right? The brand itself was essentially fake unauthorized use of a dead man's name. And now it was being counterfeited. The brand couldn't control it. Fakes everywhere. In some markets, fakes outsold real items. And the quality of even real Von Dutch was declining. Racing to produce enough product, quality control suffered. People paying $80 for hats that fell apart, stitching that came undone, materials that looked cheap. Inside the company, power struggles, Sorensen vs. other stakeholders, questions about who actually owned what. 2004, at the peak of Von Dutch's success, Christian Audigier suddenly left and immediately started Ed Hardy, another brand based on a respected artist's work. Don Ed Hardy, legendary tattoo artist, and Audigier licensed his name and designs. Same exact playbook. Take respected underground artists' work, license it, celebrity gifting, manufactured hype, sell to mainstream. And it worked again. Ed Hardy exploded, became huge, then collapsed just like Von Dutch. Audigier had figured out the formula. Find credible art from respected source, commercialize it, market aggressively, ride the wave, move on before it crashes. Meanwhile, Von Dutch was already starting its decline. Peak was 2004. By 2005, cracks were showing. Oversaturation. When everyone has something, it's not cool anymore. And celebrity culture moved fast. Paris Hilton was on to the next thing. So were the other celebrities. By 2006 to 2007, Von Dutch was becoming a punchline, symbol of tacky mid-2000s excess. Financial troubles. Despite the huge revenues at peak, money seemed to have disappeared. Where did it go? Lawsuits from investors, partners, suppliers. Everyone trying to get what they were owed. Sorensen's involvement became less public, harder to track. The brand sold, changed hands, sold again, each time for less money. The value was plummeting. And through all of this, the daughters were still fighting for proper compensation, still trying to reclaim their father's true legacy. While their father's name, which once meant artistry, authenticity, counterculture, integrity, was now associated with Paris Hilton and reality TV, the theft was complete, not just of his name and designs, but of his entire legacy. To understand what Von Dutch meant in 2003, you have to understand the moment. Reality TV was exploding. The Simple Life, Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie were everywhere. Celebrity culture was reaching new levels of saturation. Tabloid magazines, paparazzi everywhere. TMZ launching. Celebrity culture was the culture. And the aesthetic, bling, conspicuous consumption, showing off wealth, excess as aspiration. Von Dutch fit perfectly. It was expensive but not crazy expensive. Recognizable. Exclusive enough to signal status but accessible enough that regular people could aspire to it. You wore Von Dutch to show you were in the know. You were cool. You were connected. You understood what was trending. But here's the thing. Most people wearing Von Dutch had absolutely no idea who Von Dutch actually was. If you'd asked people in 2003 who is Von Dutch, they couldn't tell you. It's a brand? A designer? I don't know. It's just cool. Kenneth Howard, custom car artist, pinstriper, counterculture icon, dead since 1992. He represented authenticity, do-it-yourself ethics, rejecting commercialism, creating for the art, not the money. And now his name was on Paris Hilton at a nightclub. The custom culture community, the people who actually knew who Von Dutch was, they were horrified. This was their culture, their community, their history, and it was being taken, stripped of all meaning, and sold back to them as fashion. People who knew Kenneth Howard spoke out. He would have hated this. This is everything he stood against. They're destroying his legacy, but their voices were drowned out. The commercial machine was too loud, too big, too profitable. And the daughters Lorna and Tori watched their father's legacy get destroyed in real time. They've spoken about this in interviews. The pain of watching your father's name, which meant something real, something with integrity, become a symbol of everything fake. They tried to tell the real story, tried to educate people about who their father actually was. But the brand's marketing was louder. The celebrity associations were more visible. The truth couldn't compete with the manufactured image, and fighting legally drained what little resources they had. Here's a modern tragedy. Search Von Dutch on Google right now. What comes up? The brand, trucker hats, celebrity photos, fashion articles, maybe the recent documentary. The real Von Dutch, Kenneth Howard, the artist, is buried pages deep. His actual art, his actual story, his actual legacy. An entire generation knows Von Dutch as a trashy 2000 seconds fashion brand. They have no idea there was a real person, a real artist, a real story. His legacy wasn't just stolen, it was erased. replaced with something completely opposite of who he was. And then Christian Audigier did it again with Ed Hardy. Don Ed Hardy, legitimately one of the most important tattoo artists in history, elevated tattoo to fine art, respected by the tattoo community. And Audigier turned his name into gaudy shirts worn by Jersey Shore cast members. Same exact playbook, same manufactured hype, same celebrity gifting, same explosion, same crash. This is a pattern. This is what happens to counterculture. Punk got commercialized. Hip-hop got commercialized. Skateboarding got commercialized. Graffiti got turned into high fashion. The cycle. Underground culture creates something authentic. Mainstream discovers it. Corporations appropriate it. Strip away the meaning. Sell back the aesthetic. But Von Dutch was especially egregious because Kenneth Howard was explicitly, vocally, fundamentally opposed to commercialization. His entire life was a statement against selling out, against corporations, against branding. And they waited until he was dead, until he literally could interject, and did it anyway. The daughters have spent years trying to reclaim the true story, trying to separate their father from the brand. There have been documentaries, interviews, articles, some effort to tell the real story, but the damage is done. For most people, Von Dutch will always mean trucker hats and Paris Hilton. What was lost? The true legacy of a complicated but authentic artist, the accurate history of custom culture, the meaning behind the name. Kenneth Howard's actual art was beautiful. His pinstriping was unmatched. His designs had meaning, history, craft, and it got replaced by mass-produced trucker hats that fell apart after 2 washes. So what happened after the crash? Where did everyone end up? By 2008, Von Dutch was essentially a joke, a punchline, a symbol of everything tacky about the mid-2000s. Fashion articles, how Von Dutch died. Remember when we all were Von Dutch? The rise and fall of the trucker hat, stores closing, massive inventory no one wanted. The trucker hats that people waited months for now couldn't give them away. What killed it? Oversaturation, poor quality. Celebrity culture moved on. The economy crashed in 2008. And fundamentally, it was always hollow. There was no substance, just hype, and hype doesn't last. The brand went into financial trouble, bankruptcy filings, assets sold. 2009, sold to Groupe Royer, a French company, for an undisclosed amount, probably a fraction of what it was worth at peak. Then sold again, and again. Changed hands multiple times over the next decade. Each new owner tried to revive it. New strategies, new marketing, new products. None worked. The brand name was too tainted, too associated with a specific embarrassing moment in fashion history. Then came the 2020s, Y2K fashion nostalgia, Gen Z discovering early 2000s aesthetics. Von Dutch started appearing again, some worn ironically, some genuine nostalgia from millennials. There were revival attempts, collaborations, limited releases, modest success at best. It'll never be what it was. And honestly, that's probably good. So where did everyone end up? Tunny Sorensen largely disappeared from the public eye, still involved in business ventures, but keeps lower profile. He made his money from Von Dutch's peak years. Whether he kept it or not is unclear. There was never full public accounting of where all the Von Dutch money went. Revenue was huge, but so were expenses and various financial maneuvers. Christian Audigier, he died in 2015. Cancer, he was 57. His legacy is complicated. Marketing genius? Absolutely. Cultural appropriator? Also yes. He made fortunes commercializing other people's art. Von Dutch? Ed Hardy, he had the formula down, but he left destruction behind. Legacies tarnished. Names turned into jokes. Lorna and Tori Howard, the daughters, they're still here, still fighting. They've given interviews in recent years, participated in documentaries, trying to set the record straight. Their message, this brand is not who our father was. Don't confuse the two. The real Von Dutch deserves to be remembered correctly. They've received minimal financial benefit over all these years. Small royalties that never matched the massive profits made off their father's name. The legal battles were expensive and emotionally draining, fighting for their father's legacy while watching it get destroyed. And Kenneth Howard, the real Von Dutch, is still relatively unknown outside custom car circles. His actual art original pieces he worked on are collector-ease items in the custom culture community, valued by people who understand what they actually are. But to the mainstream, Von Dutch still means trucker hats. In 2021, a Hulu documentary covered the whole story. The Curse of Von Dutch, a brand to die for. It brought the true story to more people, exposed the exploitation, gave the daughters a platform. But for most people, it's just an interesting story about a fashion brand. The damage to Kenneth Howard's legacy is probably permanent. Search his name. The brand still dominates results. His actual art, his actual story, you have to dig for it. Though more people know the truth now, that's something. Awareness of the theft, the exploitation, the fraudulent appropriation. And the fashion industry is still doing this, still finding underground cultures to appropriate, still commodifying authenticity. But Von Dutch stands as maybe the most egregious example. A cautionary tale. What it teaches: protect your intellectual property, trademark your name. Don't trust people promising to honor your legacy while offering bad contracts. And for consumers, question what you're buying. Understand the story behind brands. Don't let marketing replace history. So what does all of this mean? What's the bigger picture? The Von Dutch story is about more than a fashion brand. It's about how culture gets stolen. Here's the pattern, the playbook for cultural theft. Step 1, find an artist or culture that's authentic, underground, cool. Preferably someone dead or powerless who can't fight back. Step 2, take their name, their aesthetic, their credibility. If they're alive, offer a terrible contract. If they're dead, just take it. Step 3, strip away all the values, the meaning, the context. Keep only the aesthetic, the parts that photograph well. Step 4, mass produce. Mark it up. Sell it to people who think they're buying authenticity. Step 5, profit while the original artist or their family gets scraps or nothing. This has happened to punk, to hip-hop, to skateboarding, to tattoo culture, to graffiti. Every counterculture eventually gets commodified. But Von Dutch was special in how blatant it was, because Kenneth Howard wasn't just uninterested in commercialism. He was explicitly, fundamentally, philosophically opposed to it. His entire life was a statement: art over money, integrity over profit, authenticity over commercial success. And they waited until he was dead, until he literally could not object, and turned his name into the exact opposite of what he believed in. That's not just commercialization, that's desecration. And they did it to his daughters who had no resources, no protection, no power to stop it. That contract they signed, it should be used as a case study in exploitative agreements. They got a tiny percentage while the brand made tens of millions. That's not partnership, that's exploitation. And the legal system failed them, because proving exploitation is hard. Fighting corporations is expensive. Justice costs money they didn't have. The lesson is tragic but necessary. Your legacy is only as protected as your trademarks and contracts. Kenneth Howard never trademarked Von Dutch because he wasn't thinking commercially. He was thinking artistically. And that idealism, that refusal to think in commercial terms, made his legacy vulnerable to vultures. Artists today, protect your work, trademark your name, copyright your designs, get good contracts. Even if you don't plan to commercialize, protect yourself from people who will. But this story isn't just for artists. It's for consumers, for all of us buying stuff. When a brand sells you authenticity, question it. Where does this come from? Who created it? Who profits? Marketing creates stories. Sometimes those stories are true. Often they're not. Von Dutch marketed itself as authentic custom culture, real American original, honoring a legend. Reality? Corporate theft of a dead man's name, sold to people who had no idea they were wearing a lie. Your purchases have impact. They fund things. They legitimize things. They send signals about what you value. Buying Von Dutch at its peak told the market, we want more of this. More appropriated culture. More hollow branding. More exploitation. But informed choices are powerful. Understanding what you're actually buying changes things. So let's end by remembering who Kenneth Howard actually was. A brilliant artist. A pinstriper whose technique was unmatched. Someone who elevated craft to art. A man with integrity. Who valued authenticity above profit. Who rejected commercialism even when it cost him. Complicated. Troubled. Alcoholic. Not a saint, but genuine. In the custom culture community, that's how he's remembered. As Von Dutch, the artist, the originator, the legend. And his daughters are keeping that memory alive, fighting for the true story to be known. The brand Von Dutch and the man Kenneth Howard are complete opposites. Don't confuse them. That trucker hat you might have worn in 2003, It represented everything Kenneth Howard rejected: commercialism, celebrity culture, status through consumption, mass-produced hollow branding. That hat wasn't fashion. It was a crime scene, a crime of cultural theft, of legacy destruction, of exploitation. Kenneth Howard died in 1992, broke, largely forgotten, but with his integrity intact. What happened after? People who never knew him stole his name, turned it into everything he hated, made millions, and left his daughters with almost nothing. But there's some justice. The brand is dead. It collapsed. It's now just a punchline, a relic of early 2000s excess. While Kenneth Howard's actual art, the real Von Dutch, endures in the custom culture community that actually values it. The real Von Dutch deserves to be remembered, not the brand, the man. Kenneth Howard, 1929 to 1992. Artist, original. He never sold out. They did it for him after he couldn't stop them. That's the criminal history of Von Dutch.